Is Matthew Knies ready to elevate his game to new levels? Let's break down the Leaf star comments and what other NHL superstars had to say from NHL Media Day in Las Vegas. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. What's happening, buddy? How we feeling on a Tuesday?
Feeling good. Players get to go and hang out in Las Vegas. Just didn't even provide an invite for us. Thanks, guys.
No, we did not get to go. Although it is the NHL Media Tour, I feel like realistically, if we would have applied for credentials, I think we could have had an opportunity to go down there most likely. Although this is a chance for them to kind of get some photo shoots in, and they're shooting a lot of stuff that gets shown way later. Like a lot of like ESPN's down there and TSN and Sportsnet, and they're shooting a lot of their content this week. And that means that there's a lot going on in terms of players are speaking. And you're starting to hear from these guys as we ramp up toward training camp, which begins in a week. Like we'll be back to training camp and back in business within a week's time from now, Dave. And just a reminder, with training camp only a week away, the Locked On Leafs podcast is now a 5-day-a-week show, Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube as well. And the Maple Leafs decided to send down Matthew Knies to Vegas for the media tour as the Maple Leafs representative. What did you make of that decision? Knies over Matthews. I thought it was kind of interesting.
It's a funny thing. It was supposed to be Matthews.
Yeah. What happened?
Wish I knew, actually. I had no idea what happened with that. Maybe didn't feel like he want. I don't know. I wouldn't say I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth of whether he actually wanted to do it, but
maybe something popped up.
Maybe he's working on. He had something come up and he just wasn't able to do it. But nice for Matthew Knies to be able to go and enjoy the time in Las Vegas. I'm sure that he got to do everything he wanted to do.
I'd imagine so, including speaking to a lot of the media members. And he made some waves with some comments that he made down in Vegas, and we're gonna kind of break down those comments for you guys today and try and decide, like, what does this mean? Like, and it's interesting because I think Matthew Knies is a player. We've spoken about this pretty well all summer. When he received that contract extension, nearly $8 million on a long-term deal, that meant that expectations were going to get infinitely higher on Matthew Knies. And now being sent out as, the representative of the Maple Leafs, I think just goes to prove that he's now one of the core members of this team. And, he's going to be linked to the success, whether good or bad, of what happens with the Leafs. He's now going to be one of the guys who's going to have to drive the bus for Toronto. And in the last couple of years, obviously Matthews and Marner have been the face of the team, Nylander as well. With Marner gone, it does feel like it's time. I think Matthew Knies is just going to step into that role as one of these core players who's expected to drive this Toronto Maple Leafs club.
Yeah. He understands the expectations put on him, but it's also, the Leafs are realizing that the core has to adapt a little bit. And it's nice to give it to a younger player, somebody that, can grow into that role rather. Yeah, it's a lot to put on a young player, but he's already been here a few years. So it's not like they're doing it for like an Easton Cowan where they're expecting somebody to step in and be a contributor right off the hop. Like Matthew Knies has shown everything that's been thrown at him, he's kind of able to do it. He hasn't shown an issue in terms of having the pressure getting to him. And I think that's probably why, they were comfortable with that long-term deal. And, it was a pay increase that, he's going to have to show a lot now. But I think he's shown that he's more than capable of it.
Oh, 100%. And really it's more of a just keep doing what you're doing, right? The progression will come naturally, with experience. He's only 22 years old. Like, but the time he's 3, 4, 5 years into the league, he's going to know exactly what to do, how to, what to do on the ice, what to do off the ice. He'll be a great leader in the locker room, on the ice. He's going to be a great Maple Leaf. I have no doubt about that. But he had some interesting comments, and you brought up the word pressure, which I thought was very obviously you brought that up for a reason, because that was one of the comments that's making the rounds from earlier today at Media Tour. And he said, quote, everyone's always going to tell you the cliche that pressure is a privilege and stuff. But I think it's honestly so much fun that there's so many people so invested in our group. I'd be upset with fans if they weren't happy, or if they weren't unhappy with my game if I wasn't playing well. Matthew Knies told Joshua Cloak of The Athletic earlier today, and that's an interesting take. Like that's clearly very different from from the Mitch Marner answers that he's given over the years.
Yeah, and he also was talking to Ellie Friedman in Kalbukauskas on 32 Thoughts, and they asked him about the Game 7 loss. And he's like, I was a little bit pissed off. It sucks to be sitting on the couch. He has a very different response to not even what Marner has said, but also what Austin Matthews has said, but also what William Nylander has said. He hasn't been through he's obviously been through a couple of tough playoff exits, but he doesn't have the same mentality as the other players have had when it comes to it. He's pissed off. You move on from it, but also understand that things need to be different. Like, I think he gets it a lot more in terms of what is needed from himself, but also the rest of the team. You should be pissed off that what happened. You should be wanting to change things because you don't want to be going through it all over again. So I find the maturity of him to be quite it's refreshing considering what we've kind of had to deal with. Not us have to deal with, but what we have seen from these players the last few years.
It's just a different disposition, right? And we've been clamoring for that for years, that there's so many passive guys, especially within the core. And now finally the Maple Leafs have, an aggressor in the core. They have their, Brady Tkachuk, their Matt Tkachuk. They have a power forward who can go out there and physically dominate and also dominate on the scoreboard as well, right? And someone who could go out there and play 20, 22 minutes a night and lean on you and be hard to play against. So the Leafs were looking for that. And someone who also just shows a little piss and vinegar. We've seen him drop the mitts and fill someone's face, and he can do that too if you get under his skin. So he is a very different player than what this team has had in the past in terms of core guys. And now, he's going into what's going to be his third full season in the NHL at this point. I think he's ready to kind of take that leap and go from being a good player for the Maple Leafs to being, not only a core player, but an elite player in the NHL. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. I've got his over under total from FanDuel of what they think his points total is going to be. So I've got a best bet for you guys coming up this season if you want to make a wager. So you can do that. And I'll tell you what that is next. But also, what are our expectations of him moving forward and his own expectations? He spoke on that as well. So we'll get to all that and more next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however I like to bet, whether I'm betting on player props, building a same-game parlay, live betting. It all is great. It makes the game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineups. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add just a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you on a Tuesday. Just a reminder that the podcast is now available 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, wherever you can find your podcast. You can also find Locked On Leafs on YouTube as well. Hit subscribe. That'd be greatly appreciated as well. So last season, Dave, you consider it a breakout for Matthew Knies. 29 goals, 29 assists for 58 points last season. Pretty good for a sophomore, I would say. What are your expectations for him going into his third season in the NHL?
I expect just another step, right? Just him I think right now taking a little more leadership, understanding that he has now got to be he's not just a passenger. Well, I wouldn't say passenger. He's not like the third guy on the top line. He is now being promoted to the sidekick.
He's Robin. He's now Robin.
Yeah. Big Robin, but he's a Robin on that line. I think he understands that, with Marner gone, someone has to fill a void. And I think the pressure falls on him. And, it all goes to the contract that he got, the fact that, they didn't really get anybody to replace Marner. And, you kind of hope for a little bit of that internal development too. And I think that's where, personally, that's where I see him taking that big step, is that with the more responsibility, he should be able to be taking a bigger step because of that.
Absolutely. I mean, not only is he going to be factored in on, Matthew's wing as kind of his partner for the foreseeable future, but, he can easily take on those penalty killing and power play minutes that Mitch Marner left behind. And I know that Knies was on the power play for the back half of last season, but now you figure if Marner's not there, are they still going to run a 5-man unit? I'm not sure. So you probably end up getting Morgan Riley or OEL back on that power play, but Matthew Knies can stay there, right? You're probably going to run Knies, Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, and one of Riley or Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But that's a spot where he is going to stay up on the top power play unit. And again, he could take over. He was killing penalties last year. Now he could take on a more prominent role killing penalties if he wants to, or if Craig Berube wants him to do that. But he knows that he's going to be expected to alleviate some of what was left by Mitch Marner. And again, speaking with the media today, he said, quote, "I have to perform better and take on a little bit more ice time or take on a bigger role. If that's what's needed and expected, then I'm going to be ready for it and hopefully successful in those areas," end quote. So he knows that he's going to have to take on a much bigger role and elevate. He's being paid that way, that's for sure, but he's expected to do that as well. And the best part is, Dave, based on what I saw in the postseason and the playoffs, like when this guy's healthy, he's capable of doing all of those things. It's not going to look the same, right? It's not going to look the same in the way that Marner does it, but he could be as physically dominant as the best power forwards in the game. If he can just find that next level, he's almost there. But he can find that level of consistency. I think that the Maple Leafs really have something here with Matthew Knies.
I do, and again, it's the type of player that he is. Big, strong, power forward. That those type of players have seemed to find a way to excel. Right. And again, finding different ways to get better every year. And that's why the potential is so high, because we haven't seen the full potential from him. And if the trajectory continues to go upwards, now I'm very curious to see, how much of a sweetheart deal is that contract going to be, really, when it comes down to it.
I think a year or two from now, you could be looking at it as one of the better contracts in the NHL, because contracts are only going to continue to ascend and they're going to get bigger and more grandiose. And you're going to look back and be like, man, Knies at sub 8 might be one of the better deals in the National Hockey League. He has that type of ability. He's shown that. Again, just go back and look at that, how he performed in the playoffs up until getting injured midway through that Florida series. Like, he was the best player for the Maple Leafs in this series, the best forward at the very least for the Maple Leafs throughout the entire playoff. And that's at 22 years old, right? And all of a sudden, another full off season to get stronger, to get bigger, to get leaner, he said, get a little bit quicker, more agile, but also keep that bulk and allow him to play that heavy game. He's only going to get better. And that's what I think is exciting about the upcoming year for Matthew Knies. Just so much more opportunity for him. And when opportunities have come knocking, Knies has knocked them out of the park. So 29 goals, 58 points a season ago. His over-under on FanDuel is only 60 points. Yeah, you can get 60-plus points for Matthew Knies to score 60-plus points on FanDuel at minus 125. That's a smash hammer bet for me. Absolutely, that's something that I'm taking the over on.
Absolutely. Like if he doesn't get 60-plus points there, he must have been through some terrible slump or gotten injured. Knock on wood.
Yes.
Don't even need I'm sorry I even did that.
Why
But
would you put that into the ether, Dave? What the hell's wrong with you, man?
yeah, I for me it's just I don't, again, 60 points, that's a pretty, again, where it's expecting him to take an a move up in terms of what he's been able to do in the past.
Well,
But his role gets more increased too.
let me give you some numbers here, okay? And why I think 60 is easily attainable. I think he's going to have 75 plus points this year. So 60 blowing past that. If you can get him, bet up the number a little bit and try and get 70 plus, I think that's where you'll find even better value. Because last year, and keep in mind, he wasn't a top 6 player the entire season. Really, only the latter third is when he really got onto that top line with Matthews and Marner. But last year, he ended up with 51 points at even strength by himself. That's without power play time. Now, that obviously he gets put on the power play a little later on into the season and then never came off of it. But 24 of his 29 goals were scored at even strength. So now you add in those power play opportunities, right? All of a sudden you go from 51 points to probably going to end up with 20, 25 points maybe on the power play. That puts you from 51. You get an extra 20 points on the power play. You're at 71 points. That blows past 60. And that's exactly where I think that Matthew Knies can get to. And again, that's 51 points at even strength, playing up and down the lineup, not starting on the top line next to Austin Matthews. So, yeah, I think that he's going to blow past that number. I think he probably somewhere between 70 and 80 points. My prediction is a 35 goal, 36 assists, maybe. Let's go 71 points for Matthew Knies this upcoming season. There's my Knies prediction for the upcoming year. What about you?
I mean, 75 is a nice number. If he gets anywhere into that 70 range, I'm going to be very happy, because I do think that this is a player that, again, the opportunity is right there in front of him. Like, he's going to be such a pivotal player for this team for now in the near future, that it should provide a lot of excitement for Leafs fans that you do have a player like this, because we hear so many times, the Leafs don't really have a lot of good young talent, or they haven't really developed a lot of prospects and stuff like that. But you can always say that a lot of teams would love to have a Matthew Knies.
Mm-hmm. The Maple Leafs would love to have more Matthew Knies. That's why they went out and got Dakota Joshua, so that they have someone down the lineup who can do a lot of similar things, right? Heavier, plays the body, has a little bit of a scoring touch, can kill penalties, can forecheck really well, sneaky, good stick defensively. So they want to, the Maple Leafs want to play like Matthew Knies. Like, if they can take one player on their team and emulate that style, it is Matthew Knies. Like, he is perfect. He's perfect in Craig Berubé's system and what they want to be, right? So it only makes sense that that they give him kind of the keys to the kingdom in a way. Obviously, not fully. Matthews is always going to be the king, but I mean, I don't know. You're looking at a guy who just plays different, right? He's a different cat, and he's just different for this team, and he's going to provide an element that they really have not had. Like, sure, they've had some guys who can play physical a little bit here and there, but they haven't had a dominant player who's physical, on the score sheet and on the ice, and that's what this guy can be.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? They really haven't had this type of player. It's there's really it's hard to find this type of player unless you go and you draft to develop it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why people should be pretty happy that the Leafs have been able to draft and develop this player because you can draft them, but yes, you do also have to see them go on a proper development path, and I think we've seen that from him.
All right, we'll come back and we'll put a bow on the Knies conversation and get into some other comments that were made at the NHL media tour that's making the rounds. That's next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every Monday through Friday, free and available. The Locked On Leafs podcast. Find it wherever you get your podcasts and also on YouTube. Dave, you want to put a bow on the Matthew Knies conversation? Any final comments you'd like to make?
I know he was asked about Mitch Marner, which it's almost like every single Leafs player has to take a Marner question. Every single one. Even if a player didn't even play with Mitch Marner in Toronto. Dakota Joshua was going to get asked about Mitch Marner. It's the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
The one thing I saw one of the comments talking about him being, the guy in the locker room that took charge of the music. And I'm like, is that really necessary to bring up? Like, are you really going to miss somebody because they played music in your locker room?
Who, Marner?
Yeah. I've heard he's like the third player I've heard talk about. I was like, does this guy have the best music taste in the world that it's just going to be so hard to not have somebody else play music in that locker room?
Dave, I don't know about you, but how many times did we talk about the Maple Leafs and their slow starts? Maybe they need some better pregame music to get them pumped up. Okay. Maybe they'll be much better off with someone else playing DJ in the Maple Leafs locker room before games, and they can get hyped up and get out there and get going and go, up 3-4 Cobb in the first 8 minutes of a game instead of getting absolutely shelled, which we saw one too many times for my liking last season.
I don't disagree with that. And yeah, they did go on to say like he did things outside and he organized a lot of stuff. I just always find the music ones kind of funny, and I didn't even think about the slow starts. But like, let's find other reasons to say Mitch Marner will be missed, other than talking about him playing music in the locker room.
Wow, I mean, yeah, it's just something. Obviously, they're gonna miss his on ice talent, though. I don't think that has to be said. No. That's something that everyone obviously knows that you're going to miss. So it doesn't need to be said. But yeah, I mean, it's very obvious and evident that it's going to be, there could be growing pains early in the season to find out, who works best where. The top six is going to look a little different, right? Not having Mitch Marner, who worked with anybody, whether it was Matthews, whether it was Tavares, you need to get one of those guys going. Typically, you put them with Mitch and he would get it going. That safety blanket's no longer there for Craig Berube, and now he's got to try and find some other combinations. And we'll see if it works. Like Max Domi has had success in the past with Matthews, so we'll see if he gets an opportunity in camp to play on that top line. Matias Michelli was brought in. We know that he is a great passer of the puck, and that sounds like a good trait quality to pair up with Austin Matthews. So he's gonna. They're going to try some things, obviously, but no one's going to replace Marner and his production and what he does on the ice, and apparently also off the ice. A lot of stuff that he did with this Maple Leafs team, but they're going to have to look within, and the other guy's going to have to step up, right? And Matthew Knies is willing to take on a lot of that load and step up as a leader in the group. So I'm excited to see if he can in fact do that. What else kind of stood out to you at media tour day down in Vegas?
Well, this wasn't specifically media tour league, because I think the Canucks had a golf tournament
Okay.
The golf tournaments are also starting up soon too, so we'll
Yeah.
be hearing from players there as well. And Pedersen made it a point to say he bulked up this off season. He added 13 pounds of lean bulk, which I'm
Ah,
like 13 pounds of muscle sounds like it's nice. It's nice to hear that he did add some, but
yeah.
it's like
I, I
13 pounds.
I'm excited every year. I get excited for that, right? The new weigh-ins on
Oh
day
yeah,
one of camp, and then the tweet comes out of what everyone's weighing in at, and who gained weight, who lost weight. Last year was hilarious because it was like the first summer where guys were just trying to gain weight because they knew Craig Berube was coming into town. And you had guys gaining like 8, 9, 12, 13 pounds over the even Matthew Knies gained a bunch of weight over
yeah.
the offseason trying to get heavier. Now he's trying to lean out this offseason, still be heavy, but a little leaner and more agile, which is great to see. But I'll be curious to see kind of what the weigh-ins look like heading into camp this year for the Maple Leafs.
I'll be very curious to see just also how many players may have done something like totally different in terms of their off ice. Like I'm curious to see if Austin Matthews, like if there's any changes to how if he loses weight, if he gains weight, although I don't think he probably would gain that much.
No, I don't think Matthews
He's pretty
changes his
skilled there.
game. He just needs to stay healthy. He doesn't need to change his game.
Yeah.
Matthews is fine. I would stay far away from trying to talk to Matthews about his kind of
Mm-hmm.
training regimen, unless it was something that could keep him healthier, like strengthen up that back maybe, so that that doesn't become a problem this season like it was all of last year. But I don't think that would be all that different, I suppose. The only other like I don't know. Like we talk about a guy bulking up and how much of a difference maker that could be in the way that Elias Pettersson did. Like if you're thinking of like a Maple Leaf, like who could, if they bulked up and could they be something different, reinvent themselves? I wonder who that guy would be. I don't think it would be Matthews. I don't think Nylander would be a guy you want to reinvent. I think Tavares is kind of who he is, so you're not going to do that there. Knies is already who he is. He's just going to continue to bulk. I mean, does he reinvent himself by going the other way? I doubt it. I do not think that is the case. What would be an interesting one? If like Morgan Riley decided to reinvent
He was like one of the
himself.
first I thought of.
Right, where like if he realizes, look, I'm not I don't know if I'm gonna be quite the elite skater that I once was. And if I can't skate and get the puck out, and if I, am not as big of a factor offensively, I got to bulk up and I got to be stronger to play against. Like that's what Craig Berube wants. He wants guys, he wants trees in front of the net, lumberjacks who are just chopping guys down. And maybe I need to focus on that, put a little bit more extra weight on. And, maybe that's the type of difference you could see a guy like Morgan Riley putting on 10 pounds over summer, 10, 12 pounds or something like that. But I don't see any of the skill guys necessarily putting on a bunch of weight. Maybe a Nicky Bobby could potentially put on some weight, Nick Robertson maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, does he have the frame to put on that type of weight and still be, the same type of player he is? I'm not sure.
Sometimes when those players put on weight, you also get worried about where they're putting on the weight and why they put the weight on as well.
Yeah, and you got to make sure that doesn't impact the foot speed, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're putting on weight, make sure it's in the lower half, not your upper half. And keep that. Although I do believe Nick Robertson was one of those guys who did put on some weight last year, but it was bottom half. It was like tree trunk, like his thighs and his like they were massive. His thighs. So I maybe that's the type of guy that we're talking about here. I don't know. Guess we'll find out in about a week's time or so when these guys come to camp and we can see what the weigh-ins all look like. Anything else kind of stick out to you from media tour day?
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really see I think this is kind of just like the first day. You're gonna see kind of a bit more happening this week.
Yeah, I think so too. Today was more of a photo shoot, I think, for most people than anything. But yeah, we'll keep you guys up to date with what's going on around the league and with the Maple Leafs. Today was heavy on Matthew Knies, but pretty soon it'll be go time. Training camps in about a week. And then, we'll have lots to get into once training camp starts up pretty soon. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You could subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at _Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Back to 5 days a week here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, free and available wherever you get your podcast. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.